All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Friday morning, getting you set for the weekend. Roads actually looking a little bit better now than they did a little bit earlier, which is good to see. Still have some of the same accidents going on out there. Augusta Road and I-20 right there at Highway 1, so be careful as you're navigating through that. Still got the accident at 378 and Sunset Boulevard, as well as the one at Kilbourne Road and Divine Street, too. So be careful as you make your way through those areas. Again, high today, 64, plenty of sunshine. High tomorrow, 75, a lot of sun. Same thing on Sunday to wrap up your weekend before the rain comes in on Monday. That's your traffic and weather on the early game. Nine o'clock Friday morning. Welcome in. It's now the extra point, but it's still me. Tyler Head along with you. Yes, after holding down the fort in the early game, rolling through the extra point, the end of the Gamecock Central takeover hour, and then I'm free at noon to inevitably go fall asleep on the couch while watching college basketball later on this afternoon. So plenty to get to. By the way, if you're wondering where Jack is, he is should be in about 10 or 15 minutes in the air en route to Fayetteville, Arkansas, as he'll be out there covering Coach Maneri's team as they take on the Razorbacks, obviously in the second series of SEC play, which we'll get into a little bit more later on in the hour. I'll let you hear from Coach Maneri. Then we're also going to have Matt Jones from Whole Hog Sports on at the end of the hour to give us a little bit of insight into this Arkansas team that is obviously going to be a tough challenge. Look, going on the road to anywhere in the SEC is going to be extremely, extremely tough. Arkansas is definitely one of those toughest environments. And for a Carolina team that, let's be honest, hasn't really played a true road series yet. I know they played the road game on Friday at Doug Kingsmore against Clemson, which, yeah, that was majority Clemson fans, some South Carolina fans in there as well. But that's, roughly a 2-hour drive up the road. And then you played the rest of the weekend at Floor Field and then Founders Park. So you didn't really get that true vibe and feel of a road series like you're going to get this weekend where, again, as I've talked about many times, you're in the middle of this tough 8-game stretch, starting with Charleston the other night, which you won. So you got one out of the way. But 3 games on the road against Arkansas, a midweek against a highly ranked North Carolina, and then, hey, the defending champs and the number 1 team in the country coming into your house next weekend to see where you're at. And, again, if you can come out of that 500, win 4 games, lose 4 games, I think we're probably feeling pretty good. If you're 1-7 or 2-6, maybe a little bit worried. Because, again, you don't want to have to dig yourself out of too deep of a hole, especially when it comes to SEC play. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later on in the hour when we hear what Paul Maneri had to say when talking to the media yesterday, previewing that series against Arkansas. But, of course, it is 9 o'clock, and as we do each and every day at 9 o'clock, we cannot start things off properly than without getting in our 9 a.m. Sandstorm pick-me-up if I go to the right hotkeys and play it correctly. There it is. Here we go.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. Probably going to be hearing Sandstorm quite a bit over at Colonial Life Arena coming up later on this afternoon. 4 o'clock tip between South Carolina and Tennessee Tech as they open up the NCAA Women's March Madness Tournament as South Carolina pursues yet another national championship. And, well, Tennessee Tech is likely to just become another one of those first-round victims that South Carolina routinely crushes en route to a deep run in the NCAA tournament. when you look at like day one of the men's bracket, right, where you had upsets, you had McNeese taking down Clemson, you had Drake, my Cinderella team, by the way. Props to anybody that put them in their bracket. Taking down Missouri. You nearly had UC San Diego taking down Michigan, albeit for a missed shot there at the very end of the game. You have a lot more chaos and upsets on the men's side of things. The women's bracket is usually a little bit more straightforward. Like if you have all number one seeds in your Final Four for the women, nobody's going to be shocked by that, right? Like the talent discrepancy in the women's game is a lot wider than it is in the men's game, so you get a lot more chalk when it comes to your NCAA women's bracket as opposed to the men. So in terms of picking that, no surprise, I've got South Carolina once again playing for the national championship, taking on UCLA. Out of personal interest, I want to see them be able to get their lick back. You know what I mean? That was so early on in the season, and albeit not a great performance by South Carolina. And, you were kind of watching that game waiting for the point where UCLA kind of hit a wall and Carolina went on a run and caught back up, and it just didn't happen. And Dawn Staley is fantastic in revenge games, by the way. So that's what I personally like to see. And there's a very real possibility we get that, or Carolina and Southern Cal, or something along those lines. Because, again, the women's tournament's a lot more top-heavy. And we fully expect South Carolina to be able to run the table and get to the very end and be playing for their national championship here in just a couple weeks' time. Carolina is so dominant, right? It really doesn't matter what you do before the month of March. And, of course, you want them to win. You want them to win the SEC regular season title, tournament title, all those kind of things, which they did once again this year. But this fan base here in Columbia has, in a way, gotten so used to winning that Carolina beating, insert SEC opponent here, Kentucky, Alabama, whoever, by 20 or 30 points on a Sunday, it's not really news. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what they're supposed to do. Talk to me in March. Well, it's March now, and these are when the games really, really matter. And we'll see if South Carolina can once again do what it always does, make a deep run and be in the mix for the national championship here coming up on that first weekend in April. They're looking for the back-to-back, which has never been done here with this program. Obviously, came very close to doing that a couple years ago before getting bounced by Iowa in the Final Four, and obviously rebounded last year with the undefeated season and winning the whole darn thing. They'd be the first team since UConn ended their four-peat from 2013 to 2016 as in terms of teams going back-to-back. And it would be such a fitting way to end what is going to be and may forever be the most successful class of four-year players in South Carolina history. And that is something that Dawn Staley talked about yesterday when speaking to the media, is these seniors, what they've meant to the program and the success that they've had with still more to come.
I think it's super cool. I never really thought about it. I didn't until you asked the question, because we stay present. But to think about them being able to do something that no other class has ever done, it would be them. It would be them, because I do believe that this class sacrificed the most of all of them. But because of their sacrifice, they put us in a position to make history. And I love this class for that, and they don't get the credit. Like, they don't get the individual credit that they deserve. They don't get the national credit that they deserve, but they get the national spotlight because they win. They are winners through and through, and I don't think there's another class within the past, 10 years, maybe 8. I'll go 8. That's won 2 national championships, let alone 3. Or the possibility of winning 3.
So, of course, the senior class, the ones that were recognized on Senior Day a couple weeks ago, were Sanaya Fagan, Bree Hall, and Raven Johnson. And Preston and I talked about this a little bit earlier. There's obviously been a lot more flashy classes to come through, the freshies being the most notable, obviously. Asia Wilson, when she came in all those years ago, even the past year with Tessa and Blaze Forwiley, even this year's class, headlined by Joyce Edwards, which you would say are more high-profile classes for women's basketball. But that class that came in a couple years ago, 2021, with Fagan, with Hall, and with Johnson, may not create all the headlines, but they are such an integral part of what this team is. They're grinders. They are truly the glue that holds things together. And you've seen that perfectly with Sanaya Fagan this year. When you lose Ashton Watkins, somebody needed to step up on defense. And yes, everybody to a degree played a part in this, but Sanaya Fagan leaps and bounds, has played out of her mind at times, stepping up when her number was called. And that's what I think this group's going to be remembered for, is those kind of grinders. You know what I mean? Those that, again, aren't winning all the awards, aren't garnering all the spotlights, but are such an important part of why this team is successful. And speaking of the success that specific group has had in where we sit right now, with still up to 6 more games to play, if all things go well, that group of Fagan, Hall, and Johnson currently have a combined record of 139-6. They've won 4 SEC regular season titles, 3 SEC tournament titles, 3 in a row, 16 NCAA tournament wins, 3 Final Four appearances, 2 national championships, and a undefeated season last year to boot, with more to come, where they could add 6 more tournament wins. They could add a 4th Final Four appearance, and they, of course, could add a 3rd national championship in a 4-year span. Absolutely. That is going to be hard to top if that does indeed happen. And that would be like the ultimate trivia question years down the line, when who knows how many more McDonald's All-Americans, first-round WNBA draft picks, and all that kind of stuff have come through here. What the most successful class for South Carolina women's basketball was? This one, as of right now, with more to add to it. And certainly hope that does end up happening. Now, we can't count our chickens before they hatch. Do still have to play those 6 games, starting off with Tennessee Tech later on today. And Dawn Staley, yesterday, in her best coaching way possible, did try and hype up the competition a little bit.
Child, I didn't talk about that.
When was that?
Right. Great history. I mean, we are creatures of habit in how we prepare. So whether we're preparing for Tennessee Tech or preparing for Texas in the championship game in the SEC tournament, doesn't change. We go through all the things that we feel will put us in a position to win basketball games, all the things that could put us in a position to lose basketball games, we're prepared for. So, we're fortunate that we're playing at home, and there'll be a lot of Gamecock fans in the stands that will help us and energize us. Although you don't really need energy, but it's good to be in this position at home, where we lead the nation in attendance year in and year out. So we're looking forward to the challenge. Very good Tennessee Tech team that's hot. 17-game win streak is a lot. So they got some momentum coming in. We got some momentum coming in. I just hope our habits are displayed and executed much longer than theirs.
And again, Carolina's 42.5-point favorite against Tennessee Tech later on today. Tennessee Tech's only played 1 Power 4 opponent this year. They lost to Colorado 91-79. Carolina's average victory in the first round, by the way, under Dawn Staley, 32 points. I think they should be okay. Looking ahead to either Indiana or Utah on Sunday, neither one of those teams have a dominant big, which we've known has given South Carolina problems this year. So I feel pretty confident in saying that Carolina should be able to navigate the weekend and come out with a berth in the Sweet 16 pretty routinely, as we kind of come to expect with this team. And again, excited to see them hopefully make a run to Tampa and another Final Four and hopefully another national championship as well. Again, women's bracket gets rolling proper today. Men already got 1 day in the books with the first, 16 games of the opening round yesterday, and the second getting set to roll here in about 3 hours' time. Go over some of the headlines, some of the upsets of yesterday coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game. Tyler Head once again telling you about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. You hear me talking about it all the time, but I am more than happy to remind you, you always need to be mindful of things going on around your home, especially if you start to notice things that are a little bit odd with your home. Things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors and windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you have any of these problems with your home, you could have serious foundation issues. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com. They'll send a professional to your home to evaluate your foundation problems and get them fixed right so you and your family can live without worry going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our head flying solo with you here on your Friday. Jack should be in the air now on his way to Arkansas for the baseball series against the Razorbacks. We'll get into some Maneri stuff coming up here in a couple minutes. I don't know about you. I'm the person that hates being texted by wrong numbers. So if I get a random text that says, "Hey, Susie, this is Jimmy. How's it going?" I'm like, clearly you have the wrong number. I will mess with those people sometimes, but mistakes do happen. So imagine how dumb I feel when in the last break there, I was attempting to text our guest, Matt Jones from Whole Hog Sports about his appearance on the show a little bit later on this morning, and I send a text, and because I didn't have his name saved yet, and it's always a red flag when you get like the green text bubble on an iPhone, because so many people have iPhones now. It's actually kind of surprising when somebody doesn't. So it sends to the green bubble, long message of the question I need to ask, and I wait for a second, and I look, and I realize I put the wrong number at the top. I switched two of the numbers in the first three, so some random person with a nearly similar phone number to Matt's got a text from a sports radio host that they've never heard of, asking them if they want to adjust the time they're going to be on the show later. So I'll keep you updated if that person texts me back. And I did find the right number, get it corrected, and then text Matt after that. So we're good to go. But funny little thing happening there in that last break. Last night, yesterday afternoon, however you want to phrase it, a classic 12-5 upset. McNeese State taking down the Clemson Tigers in a wildly entertaining game. Kind of lopsided in the first half, but Clemson came charging back, only to come up short. And a game that I was going to pick McNeese because I just felt like they were a better team in this situation and had the ability to pull the upset. But the Will Wade stuff gave me pause because I thought it was going to be too distracting. And after the game, Will Wade, and I'm not the only one, talking to a lot of people that thought this was going to be an issue, saying, nah, not really.
I mean, I've been focused on the game. I mean, they'll tell you. I mean, I've been on one about the game. I mean, so whatever else is happening, that's of no distraction to us. I know everybody else. I mean, thinks that there's distractions and stuff. We operate the same way all the time. And so we hadn't operated any differently. The walkthrough hadn't been, nothing's been any different. So, there hadn't been a lot of motion. It's been narrow focus. The bigger the game, the narrower your focus. And it's been absolute narrow focus on winning our first NCAA tournament game at McNeese State and continuing to change. This is just huge for our school. Our enrollment's up 3%. Our applications are up 10%. And we've gotten freaking $25 million worth of free advertising the last couple weeks. Our stuff's going to go through the roof. It's going to change our area. It changes our 5 parish areas, changes everything. So, that's what our focus has been. And we've broken every record in the book. This was the last one to get. We want to keep this going.
It is funny to hear him say we are our parish, our school, all that kind of stuff, knowing that he's going to be out the door as soon as their tournament run ends, which again is why I thought there's going to be too much distractions for them to be able to pull off an upset like beating a 5 seed in Clemson. But the sense I get from hearing the players, is they're more locked in than ever. Like they know this is the last ride with this crew. And Will Wade is going to go to NC State, take over that job as soon as McNeese is bounced out. There's likely going to be a couple of those players going with him. And if not going with him, likely going to other power schools, earning their opportunities there because of how well they've played and obviously what they can do in the NCAA tournament. So, and I tip my hat to them because we are so used to coach speak, right? Where you can have a picture of a coach at the campus of the school that's interviewing him for a different job and hold it in front of him and say, what's going on here? And he's like, I was visiting a friend. Nothing nefarious happening there. Wasn't interviewing for that job. Or he's like, I don't know. You photoshopped that. That's not real. It's AI or something along those lines. For Will Wade the other day to say, look, I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, I've been talking to him, which is essentially telling you that, yeah, he's going to take that job. I can appreciate that. And look, Will Wade has been controversial in his coaching career, and I'm not denying that. He's a good ball coach. He knows how to win in the tournament, as he just showed you yesterday. And I don't know. I feel like the fact that the players aren't speculating themselves, because if he denies this, right? No, I'm not talking to NC State. I don't know what you're talking about. I want to be McNeese forever and blah, 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 blah. If he's doing that, but the players are hearing from direct sources, hey, your coach is going to leave as soon as the tournament's over, that's what people are talking about in the locker room. Hey, did you hear, this is what this guy's saying about coach. This is what this guy's saying about coach. And, I hear he's already got his bags packed for Raleigh and all these kind of things. Instead, by getting out ahead of it, letting everybody know what's up. It's like, okay, we know the deal. He's gone whenever we lose. Let's not lose. Let's try and stretch this out as far as we can. and in a weird way has created even better mindset for that team. The same can be said for the other side, for Clemson, who, again, many people had probably going pretty deep in this thing. This is Brad Brownell yesterday talking about falling short against McNeese.
Well, this team has obviously showed that the last two games. We didn't play as well against Louisville either at times. And a similar team, to be honest with you, very athletic and physical, and they bothered us as well. And obviously we cut it to one possession in both games. We've got a great group of guys. They're unbelievable. These two guys are phenomenal leaders. And, you don't win as many games as we won this year without these guys being great players and really connected and great leaders. And so we're obviously proud of all that. We're disappointed that we, in this setting, after what we accomplished last year, that we didn't play better.
I mean, unless I'm not thinking of something, this was his best Clemson team. I know last year's team went to the Elite Eight, but this team looked like they were better than that one. Their record certainly backs that up. Carolina somehow beat them back in December in overtime, which looks crazier in hindsight now, given how good Clemson is. But that's a darn good Clemson team. They just extended Brad Brownell earlier on this week because he was being rumored to the Indiana job. And if anything, again, go back to yesterday, I thought the team whose coach had been extended, that was the higher seed, would have no problem with the team whose coach was definitely on the way out the door and had never won an NCAA tournament game before. But, hey, that's the beauty of March Madness. And for Clemson, it's going to be a tough offseason dealing with that. Again, they're going to come back. They're going to be good next year as well, which, funny enough, Brownwell will get his opportunity to see Will Wade in conference play with him being just up the road at NC State. But a season of disappointment at the end for Clemson because, again, for a team that was better than the Elite Eight team, they certainly expected a deep run on par, if not deeper, of getting to a Final Four, national championship, whatever it may be. And now they're sitting at home after the first day. But as is the chaos of March, and that's why we do indeed love it so much and are so very much entertained by it. And things get rolling a little bit later on today with second-round games on the other half of the bracket, so to speak, as we figure out what kind of upsets can happen today. Like yesterday, I kind of put on the scale. Preston made me pick any number other than 7 because I feel like that's kind of an easy number to get. I go 6.5. We had a couple of double-digit seeds in McNeese and Drake and Arkansas technically as a 10/7 pickup wins, which that always, you want to see that, right? Like that's part of the chaos of March Madness. UC San Diego misses the late 3 against Michigan that could have tied the game. So we got a little bit of drama there. Like a 8, 9, or 10 type of day is a lot of like deep lower seeds, 14s, 15s, maybe a 16 pulling off an upset. Buzzer beaters, crazy things happening, things we've never seen before. That kind of takes it to the next level, and maybe we'll get that later on today. But a solid first day of the NCAA men's tournament that hopefully is setting the table for a very fun entire tournament leading up to the national championship coming up here in a couple weeks. Baseball big weekend on the road to Fayetteville. They're already there. Jack's on the road to Fayetteville, or the air on the way to Fayetteville as of right now. Let's hear a little bit of what Paul Maneri had to say yesterday, talking to the media, previewing what's going to be a huge series taking on the Razorbacks. That's coming up next. Quick reminder, by the way, next Friday, we're going to be out at Charwood Golf Club, West Columbia, for the 107.5 Game Spring Golf Classic, this year in partnership with the Lexington County Gamecock Club. If you want to take part, give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000 to register your foursome. We're going to have the par 5 golf ball cannon back out there again. Going to be giving away baseball and football season tickets to lucky winners. And special guest, Basketball Hall of Famer and former Gamecock great Alex English, going to be hanging out there as well. That's all coming up next week at the 107.5 Game Spring Golf Classic, benefiting the Lexington County Gamecock Club. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday. You're all in the game. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head flying solo with you on this Friday morning. Baseball in action tonight, taking on Arkansas. 7:30 first pitch. Pregame coverage starting at 7:15 right here on the game. As, again, they look for their first significant series win. Is that a good way to phrase it? Yeah, I know they've beaten Morehead State and Sacred Heart and teams like that. That's all fine and good. You're supposed to win that. But Clemson dropped 2 of 3. Or, excuse me, Clemson dropped all 3. And then Oklahoma last weekend dropped 2 of 3 and really shouldn't have dropped that third game, which is one that I still think bothers a lot of people, and rightfully so, because of the way that things kind of came unraveled there. But big road test this weekend. Again, there's no such thing as an easy venue to play in the SEC, and that's certainly the case when you talk about Arkansas and a fan base that knows its baseball, that's smart, that's going to show up, it's going to pack it out. I think the weather's supposed to be pretty nice out there in Fayetteville, so no deterrents that are going to aid South Carolina. And I'm sure there may be a few, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of Gamecock fans to counteract the noise and the heckling that the Razorback faithful are going to be doing to South Carolina's players this upcoming weekend. And hey, if you can escape there and you can manage to get 2 out of 3, you've accomplished something, and you feel maybe a little bit better going forward. Because again, this team isn't bad, and even in the games they've lost, they've been tight in all of them in the last couple of innings. And again, unfortunately, blew the one on Sunday against Oklahoma. So they have the capability of being there. They just got to, much like the men's basketball team, figure out a way to get over the hump a little bit with some of these better teams. Because, again, you're 1-5 between Clemson and Oklahoma. And as much as fun as it is to, beat the Winthrops of the world and Davidsons, those games only mean so much in the grand scheme of things in terms of the overall season. Coach Maneri, yesterday talking to the media, discussed a little bit about the difficulty in general playing on the road in the SEC.
It's difficult, but, as I'll tell the players, the difficulty is that the other team gets the bat in the bottom of the 9th inning, so you better have a good closing relief pitcher and make the plays. But Oklahoma came here and won 2 out of 3 against us on the road, so it's not impossible. I feel like, we had that game won. We just needed to make the plays in the 9th inning, and we'd have held on. We needed to throw the ball over the plate in the 7th inning, and we would have held on. So you got to do those things on the road because the other team gets the bat last. But the fans themselves, as passionate as they are and as loud as they can be and all that stuff, that shouldn't affect your players. I mean, the game is played between the white lines, and that's the thing you got to remember. Anything that's yelled at you or their loudness or whatever, that's just for creating a great atmosphere. It shouldn't impact the way you play the game. Yeah. And that's, I'll explain that to the players. So you just got to, but the other team is more comfortable at home. They sleep in their own beds. They have their practice routines, pregame routines. All that stuff makes the other team seem to play better. So that also is a challenge of it all.
And that's the thing that he hit on there at the end. Yeah, the heckling's going to be there, and maybe a lot of guys can kind of drown that out, but it's the routine, right? Like, think about when you stay at a hotel and, you bring your clothes and your toothbrush and all that kind of stuff from home, but it's rearranged differently. So when you wake up and go to the bathroom or take a shower or whatever, it's different than when you do it at home, and it may take a couple days to kind of fall into a rhythm, fall into a routine just because your surroundings have become suddenly different. It's no different with baseball, especially baseball being, and of course I'm a very superstitious person and was plenty when I played baseball for over a decade, myself. You have habits, right? And you have things that when you're playing at Founders Park, you know where they are. It's easy to get to. You're not having to ask questions. You're not having to be guided everywhere. When you're in an opposing venue, it's different. You're not as comfortable. You don't know where the sun is going to be in reference to the time of the game and stuff like that. That's important, especially if you're playing in the outfield. You know what I mean? So there's so much value in playing at home and just being surrounded by, obviously, your own fans, but things that are familiar and comfortable to you that South Carolina's not going to have this weekend. And look, Paul Maneri knows all about tough road environments. Alex Box Stadium down there in Baton Rouge, one of the, if not the toughest places to play in the SEC, has been a house of horrors for many teams over the years, especially when Maneri was at the helm. And he's very familiar with going out there to Fayetteville, Arkansas. So this is no new thing to him. And in fact, because obviously David Horns been at Arkansas for a very long time. I went back and looked. And from when Maneri got to LSU in 2007 to when he left after the end of the 2021 season, they played Arkansas every single year in the regular season. Just regular rivals. Battle for the boot, right? Do you know what Maneri's record is against Dave Van Horn? 28-16 in the regular season. Maneri has dominated Dave Van Horn in regular season games, both at Arkansas as well as on the road in Baton Rouge, or at home in Baton Rouge and on the road in Arkansas. So he knows how to get it done. He knows how to beat a team coached by one of the best coaches in the SEC and one of the best in the country in Dave Van Horn. And I hope, we all hope certainly, that experience lends itself to a great weekend and a series victory this weekend. It all gets rolling coming up tonight, of course, with game one. And Brandon Stone rotation going to stay the same. Brandon Stone going to get another opportunity. And I'm not in the camp of canning somebody after one try, right? And I know Maneri has brought it up several times. The fact that he didn't get adequate time to warm up last week, which showed on the mound, because, again, Stone's been lights out when he's coming out of the bullpen and shut guys down left and right. But if he did not get his full allotment of pitches, which according to Maneri he did not, and something he's brought up multiple times, it's clearly bothering him this week, you saw it in the first inning where he got knocked around pretty bad. But after that, he settled in and pitched fine. A respectable outing from the second inning on for Brandon Stone last week. Unfortunately, the damage was already done at that point. You wonder where confidence is, right? Because pitchers are head cases. If you've never been a pitcher or been around a pitcher, if they get in their head that there's a problem, if they get in their head they're not good enough, they may be done. And especially for a young guy or younger college guy like Brandon Stone, you just hope, and I'm sure Terry Rooney's been on top of it, hyping him up and telling him, to shake it off and all that kind of stuff. You just don't want it to get in his head and affect him in long term going forward. Because, again, he's been money coming out of the pen, and he earned the opportunity to start on Friday. It wasn't like Becker got hurt and hey, you go out there and throw now. No, he earned it. He performed better, and he got the start because of it. And I certainly hope the start goes better coming up tonight and throughout the entire weekend, obviously, with Eskew and McCoy to help South Carolina get a win. You know what I mean? Bat's going to need to be good. This is a very solid pitching staff. It's not maybe as lights out as it's been in years past for Arkansas, but they're a team that can give you trouble. They're a team that fields the ball exceptionally well, too, so don't count on them to make too many mistakes out there in the field. So you're going to have to put the ball in play. You're going to have to find the gaps where they aren't, and you're going to have to drive in runners. This is an Arkansas team that hits the ball really well, so it may take a lot of runs to win this games over the course of the weekend. But I can't stress enough the importance of coming out of there with, at worst, one win. You know what I mean? You cannot get swept again. That puts you so far behind the eight ball, i.e. that's not a reality I want to think about. You obviously want to win at least two. But if nothing else, if you can escape with at least one, okay, sure. But a series win will go a long way. Still a lot of baseball to play. Over half the season left. But you don't want to drop to 0-2 in conference. Because once again, that is a tough hole to dig yourself out of if you do indeed get that far in. So we'll see what happens with that. Coming up, that's who I was texting Matt Jones from Hog Sports a few minutes ago. See if I wanted to move to the top of the hour. I had him slotted for 9:45, kind of for that short segment there, but had an opportunity to move him to 10. So we're going to do that. We're going to get his perspective on this Arkansas team and how good they are as they get set to take on South Carolina coming up, starting tonight for game number one and through the course of the weekend out there in Fayetteville. And I'll probably slide in a basketball question or two since Coach Calipari and Arkansas are one of the talks of the first round of the NCAA tournament. We'll come back, wrap up hour number one of the Extra Point. More basketball. How closely are you watching the SEC? And are you cheering for them? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. It's our head along with you on your Friday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head flying solo with you on your Friday here on the game. Again, Jack en route to Fayetteville, Arkansas for that weekend series taking on the Razorbacks as Coach Maneri's crew looks to get a series win that would alleviate some of the concern maybe surrounding this team as of right now. But that'll be going on this weekend. Of course, women's basketball in action as they get rolling with the NCAA tournament later on today at 4, taking on Tennessee Tech. And, of course, the men's tournament, the second half of the first round going on today, and then the round of 32 running Saturday and Sunday as well. Of course, so much of this season in college basketball in general revolved around how good the SEC was. How many teams are going to be able to get in? How many teams were they going to be able to get in? The answer was 14, if you count the play-in games. With Texas obviously occupying one of those spots before getting bounced by Xavier the other day. And no league is truly dominant top to bottom, where no matter who they match up with, they're just going to dominate. You have your obvious top of the top in the SEC. You have middle ground, then you have your bottom feeders. Unfortunately, right now, South Carolina's a bottom feeder with how the season went. But that middle ground is so curious, right? Because it's no surprise, 7 teams in action already in the tournament so far for the SEC. Texas obviously lost that game to Xavier in the first 4 the other day. It's no surprise that Auburn took care of Alabama State, though Alabama State had it interesting there for a little bit in the first half, not going to lie. Or the fact that Tennessee took care of Wofford by 15 points. Those are kind of expected. And be honest, you probably didn't watch those games, right? Like the thing about March Madness, and I love the fact that the TV broadcast will have other games going on, the scores at the top of your screen, so you can see, okay, game I'm watching is getting out of hand a little bit. Let me flip it over to True TV and see what's happening over there. So those games were probably ones, in addition to Houston beating SIU Edwardsville, probably games that you had an eye on score-wise, and if they got interesting, you would flip over, but they handled their business. No concern there against, obviously, Arkansas with their huge win over Kansas. It was probably game of the day overall, if we're being completely honest, in terms of entertainment value. A&M takes care of Yale. Little dicey. 9-point win there for A&M, but everybody feeling good on that side of things. But on the flip side of things, you have, obviously, Texas losing to Xavier the other day, getting bounced and likely getting Rodney Terry fired. Clemson, who played one of the most disastrous first halves of college basketball you'll ever see, especially in a tournament setting for a team as highly skilled and highly ranked as they are. Played a phenomenal second half, but not quite enough as fall to McNeese 69-67. And that's not the SEC, obviously, but local connection there. Missouri falling to Drake 67-57 in a game that, give Missouri credit, they stormed back, right? They were down by a lot early on in that game, put together a great second half, made it interesting, got within a couple points, but not able to kind of break that buffer as Drake threw down a couple dunks there late and is able to hold on for that win. And then if you thought Clemson's first half was terrible, Georgia, I think, beat it. They scored more points, but they looked collectively worse in that first half, I feel like, than Clemson did, falling 89-68, but that does not speak volumes to how bad Gonzaga was mercifully beating them in the first half of that game as the SEC off to, I don't know if it's a shaky start, but one that, may have the better teams going deep. These teams in the middle ground maybe not seeing too much outside of these first couple rounds. So we'll see what happens. But again, a lot of eyes to keep on for the best conference in college basketball this year and how they do through the NCAA tournament. That'll do it for hour number 1. Coming up in hour number 2, Matt Jones of Whole Hog Sports jumping in here to talk about Arkansas baseball. Get some insight into the team that Maneri's crew's taking on this weekend. That's coming up next is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on the game. 10 o'clock. Welcome back in. Hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday on the game. Of course, getting you set for Gamecocks and the Razorbacks in action out in Fayetteville on the baseball diamond coming up later on today. As we've talked about, it's going to be a tough test for Maneri's crew going on the road truly for the first time this year into what is always a tough environment out there in Fayetteville, Arkansas. To give us some perspective on this Arkansas team from WholeHogSports.com, welcome in on Love Chevrolet phone lines, Matt Jones. Matt, first of all, appreciate you taking your time this morning. I know you're a busy guy. Obviously, the rankings and the record speak for itself. How would you assess what you've seen out of Arkansas so far this season?
Well, I think they're a really good team. They hit better this year than they've hit the last several years, really. I think this is the best hitting team they've had probably since at least their 21 team that was the number 1 seed at the NCAA tournament, and maybe even before that. Their first 6 spots in the lineup are all hitting over 350 right now, and their team OPS is about 1026. They're slugging close to 600. Team batting average 322, averaging about 10 runs a game. So they've been really good offensively, and I think we knew they were going to be real good offensively this year. But, what I think has been a little bit of a surprise has been that the pitching has not really materialized the way that we thought it would. They had some struggles last week at Ole Miss on the mound in terms of their starting rotation. Gabe Gackle got moved to the Saturday role. Zach Root, who used to pitch out there at East Carolina, he moved to the Friday night role. And then they've got Landon Sheets, who's a left-handed transfer from Ohio State. He's pitching on Sunday for them. And last week at Ole Miss, their starters only gave them 9 1/3 combined innings. And Ole Miss really touched them up in the first inning of each game. So I think their pitching is better than what they showed at Ole Miss last week. But I guess the identity of the team this year has maybe been a little bit surprising to me because I thought they'd be a team that, held their opponents down from a pitching standpoint. And they've done that in some games, but they've been a team that, maybe more often than I expected, they've had to slug their way to wins.
I'm glad you brought up the pitching thing because I was going to ask about Zach Root, who did start that Friday night game against Ole Miss last week and only lasted 3 innings. What specifically went wrong with him, assuming we're going to see him coming up tonight that Ole Miss was able to exploit?
Well, I think some of it last week was just, bad luck. And you run into that in baseball sometimes. They're playing on a real windy night in Oxford. Wind was blowing out, I think, about 25, 30 miles an hour. And it made that ballpark play really small. And the wind, affected some things, a couple of wind-aided home runs. There was, and then, like I said, bad luck. 2 times Arkansas had an outfielder that left his feet, and it caused a single to turn into a double. There was another time where Ole Miss was stealing from first, and so the shortstop, crashes towards second base to cover, and wouldn't you know it, a flare goes right over the top of where he would have been standing, and it's a bloop double. So it was just that kind of night for him. He wasn't as sharp as he usually is, but there was some bad luck involved in that too for him. And it's tough for a pitcher. We talk a lot of times about how the wind affects. We've dealt with some wind out here, and probably dealt with some wind tonight too. Tuesday we played a game where Wednesday I should say. Tuesday the wind was gusting 40 miles an hour for a game against ORU, and Wednesday it was gusting 55 for a game against ORU. And it's not going to be that windy tonight, but it's still here. But what I was going to say was we talked about how the wind affects hitters and hitting and fielding and things like that. It affects those pitchers standing up on the mound too. Kind of bounces them around, can cause a little bit of trouble with their command. Root, I'm not worried about him at all. I think he had a bad outing last week against a good lineup against Ole Miss and had some bad luck behind him. Otherwise, he's been really, really good, and that's why they moved him to the Friday night role last week in the first place.
Again, talking to Matt Jones of WholeHogSports.com about Arkansas baseball ahead of their matchup this weekend with South Carolina. Let's look over at the offensive side of things. Wahila Alloy was one of the best power hitters on this team last year, but not the most consistent. He's hitting 400 right now and on pace to double his home runs from a year ago. What specifically with him is different in 2025?
Well, his brother's playing behind him. They got Kahil Alloy to come in and play behind Vahiva. And, we saw Vahiva last year. He went up to the Cape Cod League, and he was on fire there. He was leading them basically in every power category, OPS, home runs, RBI, and then he finally shut it down, somewhere early, maybe the first, second week of July, so he could go back out home to Hawaii and spend a little bit of time there before he had to come back for school to start. And Arkansas signed his brother, Kahio, who is a DH. He played at BYU last season. And those two have just been monsters in the middle of the lineup. I think one's hit 9 home runs, one's hit 8. Kahio at one point was hitting like 565 this year, leading the country. He's got the craziest stat to me on this Arkansas baseball team is that Kahio Aloy is hitting over 600 this year with runners in scoring position. And he's got 30-plus RBI already. It's really been a revelation with him because the thought was they would have to platoon their DH, and that he did not hit against right-handers well. And honestly, he's hit right-handers better this year than he's hit left-handers. And so he's been really good. And I think that, they've kind of brought the best out of each other. It's a long way from home when you're here in Arkansas and you grew up on Maui. And, I think Vahiva's just a lot more relaxed this year. He's got a better swing. He's changed some things in his mechanics where there's not so much timing that has to be or so many pieces that have to be on time in his swing. And I think having his brother here, too, has maybe helped just relax him and give him a little bit, more a feel of home so far away from home. And, both of them have been really good. Arkansas's got a JUCO transfer named Brent Iredale, who's batting right behind them. He's an Australia native, and, he can really hit. He's got a lot of bat control. They've added Cam Kozel, who played last year at Vanderbilt. They've added Logan Maxwell, who played last year at TCU, and they've added a leadoff hitter, Charles Davalon, who is from Canada, and he played last year at Florida Gulf Coast. And this guy in the last 10 games has got 8 multiple hit games, and he's batting like .537 during that time. And so that's where I say the first 6 spots in this lineup, there's really not a hole where you say, okay, we get past that guy, and then we can get to him. There's a hole down at the bottom of the lineup, and I think it's that way with a lot of teams. But that first 6, when they get going, Arkansas's had a lot of big innings this year. I think they've had 11 innings of 5 runs or more scored. They had a 12-run inning the other night against ORU. It's like when that machine gets going, it's something else to watch.
Of course, Coach Van Horn's been there for a long time, and in the past 10 years hasn't gone more than 3 years without taking a team to the College World Series. That would fall in line with 2025. It's kind of a silly question to ask about the number 3 team in the country right now, but a lot of baseball to play. Does this feel like a College World Series team to you right now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it does. But, there's so much luck that goes into that. Arkansas, I thought they had a College World Series team the last 2 years when they won the SEC in 23, and they won the West last year. And, they were a national top 8 seed both times, had home field advantage. And, they were set up perfectly both times. And then Hagen Smith, who I think is the best pitcher Arkansas's ever had, he had the 2 worst outings of his life in regional games against TCU 2 years ago and Kansas State last year. And that's just the way it works out sometimes. I think that, they couldn't have drawn it up better than to, be in the winner's bracket with Hagen Smith pitching on his home field. And it just didn't work out for him the last 2 years. So that's how it is. Sometimes the best teams don't make it to Omaha. We've seen that. Arkansas in 21, Tennessee in 22 was that way. It's kind of weird how that works.
When you look at things on the other side, of course, Paul Mainieri taking over South Carolina's head coach. I'm sure you've covered, Arkansas baseball for a long time, very familiar with Mainieri from his time at LSU. How do you and I guess other fan bases around the SEC look at the South Carolina team with him at the helm now?
You know what it reminds me of a little bit is what Arkansas did with John Calipari, hiring him as their basketball coach. You've got a coach who obviously has got Hall of Fame credentials, and you've got a program that has experienced success in large doses in the not too recent past, and is hungry to get back to that point. And so, it's weird because used to, I don't think you hired a coach and without thinking that they could be there for 10 years. 10, 15 years ago, nobody would have ever thought about hiring a 67-year-old coach in Mainieri's case or a 66-year-old coach in John Calipari's case because, they're probably not going to be in those jobs in 10 years. But what's changed so much is that now the expectation is to win now. And, you bring in people, and if they can only give you 2 to 5 years, then, hey, that's great. And so I've got a lot of respect for Mainieri. You're right. I saw his LSU teams play a lot of games. over the years. And, I always felt like they were very fundamentally sound and didn't beat themselves. And that wins you a lot of baseball games. I think he's a heck of a coach. I'm very interested to see how it goes there at South Carolina, because the last 2-3 years at LSU didn't go so well for him. Arkansas passed him in the West. Mississippi State passed him. You could probably even say Ole Miss did. But it's, again, you got a hungry coach and you got a hungry fan base. It's just like Arkansas basketball right now. That can take you a long way.
Again, talking to Matt Jones of WholeHogSports.com, mentioning basketball. Tomorrow's game going to pretty much rival the showdown between Calipari and Rick Pitino. Once again, you're going to have a second screen on that one, a second set of eyes. Keeping watching what's happening with that.
Well, I'm interested to see if they move the baseball time tomorrow, because as it is right now, and I don't have any reason to believe they will, because I've seen some NCAA tournament games covering baseball at Baum before, but as it stands right now, we're looking at a 1:40 tip-off for Arkansas St. John's in Providence, and I mean Central Time. It'd be 2:40 there.
Yep.
And we're looking at a 2 o'clock Central first pitch here, 3 o'clock your time, for Arkansas, South Carolina. It's 20 minutes after tip-off. I'm interested to see how that affects the crowd tomorrow. And I'm sure it's this way there too. There are a lot of people who are Arkansas baseball fans, and it doesn't matter what the basketball team's doing or the football team's doing. They want to see them do well, but they're baseball fans first. And so I think there's going to be great crowds all weekend. The weather looks like it's going to be pretty good. It is spring break here. Spring break begins after classes are over today. So I don't know that the Hog Pen will be quite as full as it usually is in left field. But, on basketball, I think you can't tell me that the NCAA tournament doesn't have some matchups in mind in the first and second weekend when they, it seems like it was very clear that they wanted, if these teams won, this Calipari-Patino matchup in round 2, and they've got it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. By the way, was it your colleague Anthony that put me in contact with you? Was he the one that Calipari insulted his haircut the other day? Is that correct? Or is that somebody else?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, no, that's him. Anthony's been on the road for all season. I don't know how it is there in South Carolina. Here after COVID, and it's not that people traveled a lot for basketball anyway, but especially after COVID, people quit traveling.
Right.
And we've made the decision to keep sending our reporters to all the games. And so, Anthony's been there all year. He's been in New York. He's been when they were in Columbia and laid that egg a few weeks ago. He's Lexington, Austin. He's been everywhere. And so he and Calipari have kind of developed a little bit of a little sense of humor, I guess, with each other. And that's what happened there.
It is nice to see kind of a human side of Calipari once in a while, I guess.
He looks so much more refreshed this year. If you go back and look at the videos and the photos of him his last 3 years at Kentucky, he looked tired and he looked worn down. And he's lost some weight here. I just think the stress of, and it's not that Arkansas, there are not expectations here, because there certainly are, but it's not the level of expectations when you've been at a program like Kentucky for 15 years. And so he just seems so much more rejuvenated since he got to Fayetteville.
Well, a lot of reason to keep your eye on Arkansas this weekend on both baseball diamond and when it comes to basketball as well. Matt, appreciate your time and excited to see what happens in the series this weekend.
Okay, thank you, Tyler.
Absolutely. Again, Matt Jones from WholeHogSports.com. And again, things get rolling a little bit later on tonight between South Carolina and Arkansas. First pitch at 7:30, pregame coverage starting at 7:15 right here on The Game. We'll jump back in the women's basketball conversation. Joe Machika from TheBigSpur.com joining me as he does each and every Friday to chat about the team hours before they get things rolling for the NCAA tournament here on The Game.
Vibing.
Yeah, you're
Crispy garlic chips and marinated onions.
And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head hanging out with you on your Friday here on the game. Joining me as each and every Friday, our guy Joe Machika from thebigspur.com, and especially special Friday because today we get the NCAA women's tournament rolling off and proper. Gamecocks in action later on this afternoon, 4 o'clock tip, taking on Tennessee Tech, the number 16 seed. I listened to Dawn's presser yesterday. She did her best to tell us about Tennessee Tech and how they can be a threat and all that kind of stuff. Joe, can you convince me any reason why I should be worried or anybody should be worried about this game today?
No, Tyler, I don't think you should be worried. Everybody said the right things yesterday. So I think it's just one of those things where, Don had mentioned that this team is in the present, right? Like they're not looking too far ahead, and then they're also not looking into the past either. So if they were going to lose to Tennessee Tech, Tyler, I would say if we showed up yesterday and they were like, all right, we're ready for the Final Four, man. Like, let's go. We're ready. Let's get out of here kind of thing. But no, this team was checking all the right boxes yesterday. They're disciplined. They're ready to get to work, and then also make a statement in this first round game against Tennessee Tech. So everybody's ready to go. It's all business over there.
I gotta imagine it's probably kind of fun to play a team like this in the first round, right? Like, I get it. They obviously have the aspirations of going deep, and I'm sure some of them are already thinking about the Final Four in the back of their minds, but they probably look at this as like, man, we can go out there and like drop 90 on this team and just have a nice, comfortable win, one more at least in front of our home crowd here in Colonial Life Arena, and then worry about the tough teams later on. Like, I'd be licking my chops excited to play this game.
Yeah. No, I think they should be too, Tyler. Especially again to get it at CLA is nuts. One of the best atmospheres in the country. But then also too, I mean, you look at it. I think this team also, it's a way to make a statement. Number one, but then also, this bench. This is normally one of those games where it's like, yeah, let the bench eat. but Tyler, the bench leads this team in scoring. So it's like it's one of those things where like you kind of just the whole team has to go out there and do the little things right. You want to make sure you're doing those right so it feels like second nature when you get into Birmingham and then when you get to the Final Four in Tampa. You want the little things to feel second nature. And to this point in the season, if they aren't already, you've got bigger fish to fry. But
speaking of the bench, did you see Steph Curry rocking the full Wiley T-shirt last night?
Yeah, absolutely. I think hat tip to Steph Curry for that. He, awesome shirt. And again, Curry athlete, Malaysia full Wiley with the 803 Currys, which are probably the best colorway. Getting 803 on some shoes is pretty dope nonetheless.
Yeah, and look, she's capable of having phenomenal performances at any time, no matter what. But you kind of look to her, Tessa Johnson, obviously Joyce Edwards, Chloe Kitts, the usual suspects, to really turn it up to a different level when you get into this tournament play. And as we kind of talked about closing out the regular season, heading in the SEC tournament, we were having different girls be the leading scorer every night. We were having different ones leading rebounds. Like, it truly is showing how much of a lump sum this team is, as opposed to in years past having just the one dominant and a lot of really good players around her. Like, this team is just full of really good players that are kind of on the same level with each other.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And I think, you mentioned Full Wiley and Joyce. Those two have been playing really dynamic together off the bench. And then you factor in Tessa Johnson as well, coming off the bench, another offensive threat, another elite shooter who plays well when the lights are brightest, right? So I think it's going to be huge. Tessa's going to get involved. But, yeah, this bench, right, again, they lead the nation in scoring for points off the bench. It's almost by 9 points. Or almost by 10 points. They're leading by 9. But yeah, it's one of those games where, again, you get everyone involved. You make sure that the ball's going through, right? If you're not shooting the best, then make sure you end on a make, that kind of game. But yeah, it's dynamic when you got Full Wiley, the big three almost really offensively coming off the bench with Edwards, Full Wiley, and Tessa. And there's other players off the bench that can score the basketball, but right now those three are who you're looking at to get the job done for sure.
And of course, if you win this game today, which we assume they're going to, you'll take on either Indiana or Utah, who tip off in a couple hours over there at Colonial Life Arena, coming up on Sunday in round number 2. And again, those teams are higher seeds. Those teams come obviously from power conferences, but just kind of skimming through, I don't see any kind of dominant bigs for either one of those teams, which obviously we've seen South Carolina have problem with those kind of squads. So again, I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse here, but it seems like this first round, as we talked about when we got the tournament selection a little bit earlier on in the week, seems to set up really well for South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Two teams that they've seen before, that they saw last year, in Utah and Indiana. Both teams like to play fast, guard heavy for sure, but both quad 2 teams when you think about it too. So South Carolina, their first 2-round games, I guess if you factor in Tennessee Tech and then also these two teams, their first 2 games in the NCAA tournament will be against quad 2 teams. And, they haven't played many quad 2 teams this year because their schedule was filled with mostly quad 1 wins or mostly quad 1 games. But, they went 4-0 in quad 2 games this year, which was big again. So I don't necessarily see too big of a problem with Utah and Indiana. Again, you can't be complacent. But that second round game, I think this will be the seniors' last last game at Colonial Life Arena. So they're going to want to put on a show for sure.
I ran through some of the numbers earlier, talking about those seniors in Sanaya Fagan, Bree Hall, and Raven Johnson. I'll run these by you as well because it's just mind-blowing what they've already accomplished before even starting their final tournament. 139-6 overall record, 4 SEC regular season titles, 3 SEC tournament titles, 16 NCAA tournament wins, 3 Final Fours, 2 national championships, and an unbeaten season, with obviously more to add to that hopefully here in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, Tyler. All they do is win. Raven Johnson is a winner. Sanaya Fagan is a winner. This class just wins and wins and wins and wins and wins. So they've got the championship DNA. It's time to time of year where it's got to come out, right? You got to do all the little things right, and you got to be so focused to where, it's going to be hard to knock you out of it.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting years down the line. Let's hope that they do go on and win another national championship, and that would mean 3 out of 4 for that group of girls right there. I don't think that's going to be the one that comes to top of mind when you ask the question of, hey, what's the most successful recruiting class in South Carolina history? And it would be that one, because I think a lot of people would lean towards freshies, which they certainly had plenty of success. But in terms of actual accomplishments, this class with those 3 takes the cake right now.
Yeah, and it's crazy, Tyler. This class is going to tend to get overshadowed because, again, they were more quiet, right? Raven Johnson is not the loudest human being in the world. She doesn't play, a super flashy game. And she's not always, demanding not necessarily demanding the basketball, but she doesn't necessarily need the basketball every time they go down the floor, right? She's an assist, but so they're not as, I guess, flashy per se. There isn't as much character on right? So I don't know. I think that might be a reason why they get overshadowed for sure. I agree. I think they think of the freshies and everything that they were able to accomplish. But yeah, one of the most productive classes in program history. And I think if you're Dawn Staley, you're trying to figure out how you can build another class just like it.
Does Carolina cover the 42.5 today?
42.5?
Yeah. Now, I will say, I did the math. They averaged beating their first-round opponents under Dawn Staley by 32 points.
Yeah, and they've been beating opponents by, I think it's an average of 27, 28, 30 in the last couple games.
Yep.
I think since the UConn loss. So at 42.5.
It's a big number.
Yeah, I think they get it done. It is.
Okay.
It's going to be close. I think it'll be we'll see Adele Tack and the tail end of the bench, getting in towards this one. So it'll kind of be, a chop shop there at the end of the game.
This is also a Tennessee Tech team. They've only played one power opponent in Colorado, and they lost by 12 points. So it's not like they've faced the toughest schedule either. And look, give them credit. They earned their way in, obviously. But, yeah, this one should be a routine day at the office for Dawn Staley's team.
Yeah, you would think, Tyler, again, and then, you get ready for game 2 on Sunday, again, potentially against IU or Indiana. Again, that game getting ready to go. It's the LA right now, but yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. And yeah, you got to stay focused, continue to stay focused, continue to stay in that locked in, mindset, all business mindset until you get to the Final Four, right? I think that's what this team is good at. They get it from the coaching staff. They're always in the present. And again, that's just a healthy headspace to be in general. But when you're, an elite, athlete, staying in the present could be one of your best traits, especially when you have all this expectation on you.
We'll continue on the basketball conversation with Joe Machika from thebigspur.com. Coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday on the Game, talking a lot of hoops with our guy, Joe Machika from thebigspur.com.
Sure.
And it is our Who Sprung a Leak segment brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. And Joe, I have to give this one to my alma mater because last night, Georgia's the 9th seed took on Gonzaga. It was 30-5 halfway through the first quarter. They eventually kicked it in gear and started scoring, but it was effectively over at that point in time. They definitely sprung a leak in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Their first appearance in 10 years, and they couldn't do better than that.
Yeah, Tyler, I'm shocked that you took this one on the chin and gave it to your alma mater rather than
how can I not?
Going up the road and not giving it to the guys at Clemson. I know McNeese was the bigger one, but I guess or with
Clemson,
Will Wade and all that. But.
Clemson was in the game at the very end, though. They stormed back, and if there was 2 more minutes on the clock, they might have won that thing. So I give them credit. The first half was an absolute disaster. They outplayed them in the second half, just ran out of time. Yeah. Georgia, it was just bad all around. Yeah,
I agree. And I don't. Did Missouri wind up winning that game last night?
No, they lost to Drake.
So I was going to say there's another. The SEC, the bottom half of the SEC, just not performing well yesterday. So it's one of those things, man. You know, not good. And UGA has to go home, try again next year.
Are you cheering for the SEC? Like, again, Carolina's not in it. They refused the NIT bid, all that kind of stuff. Like, we've talked so much this year about how strong the conference is. And there's like with any sport, there's the pride and, hey, we play in the best conference, toughest conference, and that's why 14 teams got in. But, like, are you wanting to see an SEC team win it all, or are you like, screw that, let them all get eliminated?
Yeah, I think you root for the SEC, but I'm very anti-Florida's coach.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I don't think he's a very great human being, but I'll let that to be the people's own research. But yeah, anybody but Florida. I mean, being as a student here and take the media no biases aside, as a student, I couldn't stand Florida. It's just the worst. My little brother was a Florida fan growing up, so it's just no Florida this year, Tyler. Anybody but Florida.
Now, how did he end up being a Florida fan?
Tim Tebow.
Okay.
He's a Penguins fan with Sidney Crosby, so bandwagon. But obviously, it was when it came down to getting tickets to anything, you were always Irish.
Don't tell me he's like Lakers, Cowboys, and all that too.
Yeah, it's just Florida Gators, and then the Penguins for some reason. Sidney Crosby, that's the only one. But still an Irish fan. Obviously, if you're from South Bay, kind of had to be, but. No, love my brother though. Shout out to Andrew.
How's your bracket looking?
My bracket, Tyler. This is I actually didn't get to fill out a bracket because ESPN Bracket Services hates me.
Well, you can't be wrong then.
Yeah, exactly. It's been nice giving out people like it's like, oh, what'd you think in this matchup? It's like it's kind of just giving bracket pointers here there. But no, ESPN the bracket challenge does not work every time. I sat down at least 3 to 4 times to try to figure it out.
Okay,
and it took 40 minutes every single time. Like I'd have them send passcodes to the emails, and then the email wouldn't come until after it expired. And just too much of a headache, Tyler. And I'm like, all right, forget it. Here we go. Like really, this, we're not filling out brackets this year. It is what it is.
So you didn't fill out a men's or women's bracket?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I saved myself some indecisiveness and again, trouble with ESPN's tournament challenge. And granted, I could have used CBS or something like that, but yeah, I didn't think about it.
It's really funny to me in terms of filling out brackets where on the mid side of things, if you had all 1 seeds in your Final Four, people are like, what's wrong with you? No, there's no way all 4 of those are going to get there. But on the women's side of things, if you have anybody but number 1 seeds in your Final Four, with the exception of maybe like UConn or an LSU, everybody's going to be like, well, what's wrong with you? Of course all the number 1 seeds are going to make it there.
Yeah. Yep, it'd be spicy if you didn't, put all the 1 seeds in the Final Four for the women's. Now, I do think UConn is going to make the Final Four as a 2 seed. I think they're just really, really, really good. Now, they haven't played as many teams, as South Carolina has, so they aren't as battle tested as South Carolina is. But again, I think UConn can make a run. I mean, the women's field is getting deeper, which is what you want to see. It's better for the game of basketball. I think that's how you help sell the women's game is by making it deep, and getting better teams across the country. And it's getting there. It's getting there. This is the deepest field we've seen yet. So, impressive stuff on the women's side for sure.
And I think this year's tournament is vitally important from that standpoint because, of course, last year you had Caitlin Clark. in pursuit of her national title. Andrew Reese was wrapping up her, college career. You just had all these storylines and characters to follow in the women's game, which resulted in that Iowa-South Carolina game being legitimately the most watched women's game of all time. And, the ratings of the regular season, you take those with a grain of salt, but head-to-head, comparing this year's Final Four and national championship to last year's is going to be interesting because it's going to really tell us how much that star power and how much those characters really bring in an audience like we know they did the past couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And I think, certainly I was talking about this with JC and the guys on the Inside the Gamecock show the other day. But, I think South Carolina fatigue is real, too. It's starting to get there, which you would think because they've been at the mountaintop for so little of time that the national stage wouldn't be as sick of South Carolina as, you would think. But, again, I think national media certainly, especially with the depth that is coming to women's basketball this season, there is some national fatigue around this team. And, part of their identity this year is that they don't like that. They're tired of it.
Well, and I think, and Don kind of alluded to this a little bit yesterday, if they were to win the national championship, which means they would have won 3 out of the last 4, of course, look, UConn did what they've done in the past. Tennessee had their run with Pat Summitt. But I feel like in today's world, especially with roster turnover and NIL and all this kind of stuff that spreads the talent out a lot more and, like you said, makes it more competitive across the board. Winning 3 out of 4 titles in today's world of college sports in general is quite an accomplishment. And obviously, if you don't believe it already, would establish them as the true dynasty of the sport now.
Yeah, I agree. Tyler, again, if they can go all the way and win another national championship, especially with the ups and downs that you've had, playing the toughest schedule that you've had, in a long time, like that, this would be the year to be like, okay, like they can do it when, they don't have all of the best talent and all of the best, and granted that they were making this whole thing about the McDonald's All-American thing to be like, oh, they've got more talent than everybody still and all that. People have been trying to, I guess, bring down the significance of what they've been doing, again, if they can go all the way. But it's pretty impressive stuff. And again, not to say that this isn't the deepest team. It's the one with the least amount of star power, right? Yeah. They all care about each other, and there's no one distinct superstar, kind of thing. I think that's what this team has going for them. And again, they're pissed off that people are starting to get tired of them because they felt like they've just arrived.
I was gonna say, who's the closest to a superstar on this team? Is it Full Wiley because of the highlights?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so. I think you got to give it to Full Wiley. Edwards is going to be up there, too. But Edwards, again, she's so even keel. Mm-hmm. And she's so, again, rocket scientist, kind of smart, kind of thing. But Edwards is going to get up there, too. I think Pau, if she were scoring the basketball a little bit more, sure. But, yeah, Full Wiley, I guess. And Kitts sure makes an argument as well for it. Yep. But, yeah. How it goes for Wiley with the shoes, man. Money, it's got to be the shoes.
That's right. Yeah, well, and again, when you're getting repped by Steph Curry, that I know they're obviously she's signed to his brand there, but that's really cool to see. And obviously, a lot of eyes going to be on this team this year for people either cheering for them here locally or cheering against them because they're sick of seeing them win, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I can tell you a lot of my grandmother's season ticket holder for Notre Dame women's basketball, and a lot of her friends are sick and tired of South Carolina. So
well, they probably feel like they were disrespected by that 3 seed as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And now, granted, Niele and Notre Dame didn't have the best end of the season, and that's kind of been Niele's teams at the moment. She's at that stage in her coaching career where she's developing depth. So she's getting there, but again, we'll have to see. And Notre Dame could be an interesting matchup for South Carolina in the tournament. Not as deep, again, as I just mentioned, but we'll have to see.
Well, it should be an exciting weekend, and hopefully this time next week we're talking about Sweet 16s and Elite Eights.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Looking forward to it. Appreciate you having me on as always, and enjoy your weekend, man. Weather's supposed to be nice. Get out there.
Absolutely. You too. Have fun over at the CLA later on today.
Absolutely will do, Tyler. Again, thanks for having me.
All right, that's Joe Manchica from thebigspur.com. You can read all of his stuff on Gamecock Women's Basketball. He'll be out there at Colonial Life Arena coming up shortly for that game between South Carolina and Tennessee Tech. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. Tyler head along with you on your Friday on the game. Well, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our head along with you here on your Friday on the Game. Wes going to jump in here with me at the top of the hour for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Chris on some official recruiting business, which we'll talk about a little bit coming up in the next hour as well. Of course, a lot of basketball conversation with everything happening with both March Madness tournaments happening, with the women's getting rolling here coming up in just a little bit, and the men's entering day number 2 of round number 1 with those games starting a little afternoon once again today on all the CBS, TNT, True TV, I'll leave one out, TNT networks or whatever. Hopefully just as good, if not better, than yesterday to give us a good start to this tournament. While that's going on over the next couple of weeks, there's also going to be some portal stuff happening because the transfer portal opens up on March 24th. So that is on Monday, and that's the first time you're allowed to officially go in and get guys out of the portal and start kind of building your team for next year. We get news yesterday that South Carolina already has one player that is planning on entering the transfer portal, that being guard Austin Hero, who, of course, is the younger brother of Tyler Hero in the NBA. And, again, this guy came to South Carolina with a lot of buzz, certainly surrounding his name and having the older sibling playing at the next level, but he's somebody that just did not see the court a whole lot, I imagine. And again, we don't know this for sure. Imagine he's going somewhere that he wants to, find some more playing time, find some more minutes, which is certainly understandable, but kind of the first domino to fall in terms of the offseason moves for Lamont Paris in South Carolina. And this can be critical because you got to get it right. You know what I mean? Yeah, you got freshmen coming in. You've got younger players that you assume are going to be back, like the Cam Scotts and stuff like that you are going to find ways to use. But at the same time, we know in today's world of college basketball, there's talent out there. You got to go find it. You got to go get it. I mean, they nailed it the other year with B.J. Mack and Talon Cooper and guys like that came in here and played their roles perfectly and helped this team put on a historic season en route to a NCAA tournament appearance a year ago. So you got to go out there and not find those exact guys, but find guys that can give you the same type of production, fill those same kind of roles as those guys did, because obviously didn't have that this year. And, God love Jamari Thomas and Nick Pringle and guys like that, and they tried their hardest, but they just didn't fit with what South Carolina needed to be successful this year, unfortunately. And now you got to go back out in the portal and figure it out. I was in the camp where I was okay with them not accepting the NIT invite, because not that you can't do both simultaneously, because believe me, there's going to be plenty of teams in the tournament also working the transfer portal as well while it's going on. But for South Carolina, I didn't want anything to distract or take away from where their focus needed to be. And that was on the portal, on building next year's team, figuring out the NIL dollars and all that kind of stuff to make sure you have a team that can get the job done. And at the very least, get yourself back to the NCAA tournament. We've been using Missouri as kind of that light at the end of the tunnel, the example, right? Saying, well, it wasn't a great season for them last year, lost every single conference game, but they did well enough and got to the NCAA tournament as a 6th seed, no less. Now, yeah, they lost last night to Drake, which is obviously less than ideal, but they got back there. And Dennis Gates is being looked at as a great rebuilder after a tough season. And we certainly hope that's the case for Lamont Paris next year as well. But it all starts Monday, essentially. Now, look, they're already aware of guys likely going to be in the transfer portal and conversations being had on who they're going to be able to bring in, because that's how this game works. And I don't know. I'm excited to see what names pop up and who they might be able to bring in over the course of this offseason to, again, hopefully get yourself back to where you want to be, which, of course, is the NCAA tournament where you were a year ago. And, again, you've got a pretty critical year for Lamont Paris in year number 4 to do your best to certainly try and get that done. So we'll see. Again, Austin Hero jumped in the transfer portal yesterday, the first one to announce he's leaving South Carolina, and we'll see if any others follow suit and obviously see again what they can get in the transfer portal themselves. That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next, it's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Myself and Wes Mitchell on your Friday on the Game. 11 o'clock on your Friday morning. Welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head. Wes Mitchell will be along in just a second. He is busy on some Gamecock Central stuff, as Chris is as well, on location for some good news that we got just a couple minutes ago in reference to the class of 2026, which we'll dive into in just a moment, as hopefully starting off a weekend of a lot of good things happening here for South Carolina. Obviously, with women's team getting rolling with their tournament play coming up here in right at 5 hours. Tip off at 4 o'clock over there at Colonial Life Arena as they take on Tennessee Tech in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. And they'll obviously await the winner of, assuming they win that game, which I have a lot of confidence they will. They will then move on to take on either Indiana or Utah in the round of 32, which will also be here at Colonial Life Arena before hopefully advancing to the Sweet 16 and on and on and on for our hopes of them winning yet another national championship, which is the goal for them each and every year, and feels just all the more real as you get tournament play rolling, because, again, they are so darn dominant that, you can pay attention during the regular season and say, talk to me when the tournament gets here, and I don't think anybody would blame you, because, again, that's just how good they are, and that gets rolling today, again, coming up at 4 o'clock. Tonight, baseball in action as they take on Arkansas, tough road test, taking on the number 3 team in the country for 3 games out there in Fayetteville. Jack, I think, should almost be there by now. Was on a plane at least 2 hours ago. Maybe he's getting close to landing, but he'll be out there covering all that for Gamecock Central. And hopefully, as we've said many times, you can walk away with a series victory. Not gonna be easy. Any road venue in the SEC is gonna be tough. Arkansas is one of the toughest, depending on who you ask. And again, you don't have the best track record right now against quality opponents. Clemson, Oklahoma, though you had the Oklahoma game won and let it slip through your fingers there at the very end. But winning a series this weekend would go a long way in just, kind of getting that monkey off your back and being able to beat those quality opponents. And hopefully that, sets you up for a good stretch run through the meat of SEC play with, you got Tennessee coming to town, coming up next, play Kentucky. I think A&M's in there. I don't have the schedule in front of me right now, but obviously, you play a lot of tough teams. LSU at the end of the regular season for the Maneri series is what I'm sure we'll be calling it about that point in time. And just kind of see how the things go. And again, one game at a time, as Maneri likes to always say. And focusing in on tonight, hopefully Brandon Stone can have a good outing and make up for the issues that he had last week. Though maybe not all that was on him, because there was the issue with the warm up pitches and all that kind of stuff that Maneri has obviously brought up a couple different times. And hopefully, again, you can be able to go in there and walk away with a good at least 2 victories and come back to Columbia and get set to face North Carolina and Tennessee coming up next week and go from there. So again, exciting things, a lot of fun things happening this weekend around Gamecock Sports, wrapping up not quite the first week, but the first half week of spring practice, which got rolling on Wednesday. Again, the guys have not been able to get out there for media availabilities just yet again. I can't remember exactly what day. I know they might have one again coming up next week, and maybe can glean a little bit more insight into, what's going on with this team as we kind of try and piece it together and learn, because there are so many questions, right? There are so many unknowns as we navigate through spring, and we'll certainly see, how things progress over spring practice, culminating with the spring game coming up here in a couple weeks with, South Carolina, wrapping up spring practice and looking ahead to 25 season, where, again, there's high expectations, and rightfully so. Come off a 9-win campaign, regardless of who you lose. The vast majority of people in college football are going to say, okay, you were good last year, go be good again this year. Going to be ranked pretty high in the AP poll and all those kind of things, and certainly hope you have the team that can, go out there and back it up. So we'll certainly see, but excited to learn more coming out of practice when we do, hearing from, I think, the assistants next week. And, of course, as usual, Beamer back on Tuesdays, going up, starting next week and all that kind of stuff as we lead you up to the spring game coming up on April the 18th. And, of course, we've got tons of men's basketball, not involving South Carolina, of course, but tons of men's basketball with the second half of the first round getting rolling today. Field of the round of 64, setting the table for the second round this weekend and on to the Sweet 16 Elite Eights, coming up next week. Hopefully your bracket's still intact. I know yesterday was messy for some people. A couple upsets, a couple notable wins for some lower seeds, some statements being made as well. So we'll get into all that as the hour rolls along. But we'll start off with baseball here. And again, going into tonight's matchup against Arkansas, assuming again that or we know that you're going to be starting Brandon Stone again, and can he get the monkey off his back from that rough outing last week? Here is Coach Maneri yesterday talking to the media about rolling with Stone for the second week in a row.
Do it again this weekend, and we're gonna, we'll have Jarvis Evans available for relief on Sunday, potentially, and if he doesn't pitch, then he pitch against North Carolina on Tuesday. But it's a constant process of evaluation. But I thought Brandon Stone pitched great last Friday. If you take the first inning away, and I don't know if I told you guys this or not, but that was such a weird start to the game.
The warm-up pitches, right?
The clock is supposed to be on 2:30. It was on 2. The clock is not supposed to start until they've done the hand check with the umpire and he steps onto the mound. They started when he crossed the foul line. So they took at least a good minute away from him for his initial warm-up pitches. He wasn't ready to pitch. He took like 6 warm-up pitches and didn't even throw a breaking ball. And so he just never really right from the start, the kid gets a base hit, give the kid credit, and then another hit. And, it was a weird inning because you never really felt like he was ready to go. The guy still might have got hit. They both might have got hit. Who knows? We'll never know. But you'd like the kid to have a fair shot at it, And I just think they mishandled that whole situation in the first inning between our clock operator and the umpires. They mishandled the whole first inning, and poor Brandon never really was able to get into a groove. To his credit, he didn't pout and hang his head. He just, grit his teeth and went out there, went out there in the second inning and pitched great. And except for a solo home run, he pitched well for 4 innings, and I think he did a good job. So we'll see. We're going to run him out there again. The only reason that I would ever take Brandon Stone out of the rotation is because he's so valuable out of the bullpen.
And again, we saw what he was able to do out of the bullpen, which earned him the opportunity to start last week. Because again, Becker had been scuffling a little bit, and Maneri's right. Which, by the way, he's brought up when he said, "I don't know if I've told you." It's almost kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing because he's mentioned it multiple times this week with not having the warm-up pitches and all that kind of stuff. Clearly, it bothered him. And again, like you said, after the first inning, Brandon Stone was fine. When you take the first inning out of it, he threw 4 innings, giving up 3 hits and just 1 earned run with that solo home run. So solid outing. Besides the first inning there, and we certainly hope he gets off and gets his amount of warm-up pitches tonight to get off to a good start there in Arkansas. We'll have all 3 of those games for you right here on 107.5 The Game. Wes joining me now. Exciting weekend ahead. A lot of sports, and we got some good news here in the past 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, just posted, was making sure we got our content all up, but Zion Giles, as we kind of expected, you never completely know, but as we expected, committing to South Carolina today, depending on where you look, is some places number 1 prospect in the state of South Carolina. That's where On3 has him. Top 40 prospect overall in the country, regardless of position on On3. And, another big in-state win for them, another big in-state O-line win for South Carolina, which is something over the last few cycles we've actually seen quite a bit of. So, obviously we'll dive into it as we go. We're going to try to get Chris on a little bit late. He's at the announcement right now.
Yes.
So he's gathering interviews and stuff, I'm sure. But we're going to try to get him later. And then we've got Kate at 11:15, by the way. So.
I thought it was funny. So you guys were live streaming it, Chris, there being in person. And I popped it on at about 10:50 just to see if the announcement had already been made, because it was like a 10:30 start, I believe, for the ceremony. And I don't know if this is the principal, but he was up there talking, and then I think his sister talked, his mom talked, all this kind of stuff, and it kind of goes back to things we've talked about before, where sometimes you get a lot of speakers at these kind of things, and that 10:30 announcement ends up being at like 11 o'clock, and I think that's what Chris was dealing with today.
Yeah, it was. To their credit, it did start on time. The ceremony did start on time. To their credit, but yeah, there was. You can tell though, this kid means a lot to that community, and
sure.
I sometimes, maybe you shouldn't read into it, but sometimes you can read into it in terms of like, if it's a good kid, people are going to want to talk about him. If it's maybe not, maybe people decline. But lots of folks, we'll get Chris's take because I didn't hear every comment that was made, but the I would say, overarching thing was that just a lot of respect in that community for this kid. Very, very proud of him, and appears to be a phenomenal family as well. And the guys that have that support structure at home, that does typically mean good things in terms of them coming in and working hard and doing all the things that are going to be needed to be successful. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we'll try and get in touch with Chris a little bit later on the hour to discuss a little bit of that. And again, Kate coming up here in just a moment. Quickly, how's your bracket looking after one day? Doing okay? You want to be honest? Sure. I haven't even looked at it. You haven't even looked? You haven't checked? I literally have not even checked. Okay. So yesterday wasn't rife with chaos. I did pick Clemson to lose. So okay. See, that's the mistake that I made because I thought with the McNeese stuff and Will Wade, I'm like, they'll be distracted. Actually, they're more locked in than ever, apparently. And Clemson. I told you they may the worst first half of basketball I've ever seen. Did you see the Will Wade conversation after the win? Yeah. Where everybody's on the same page. But I was trying to triple check to make sure that it was not one of those AI recreations. He's like, everybody knows the deal. Yeah. Did he literally admitted that he told his players, hey, if you play well, maybe I'll take you with me. Seems that way. And that's probably true. There's probably 2 or 3 of those guys that may end up on the NC State teams next year. And if not there, some other Power 4 school. So, yeah, they got a lot to play for. And, again, the AD was giving him a hug after the game. Like, there's no ill feelings. That was the first, NCAA tournament win in school history. Like, everybody's enjoying it, and who knows how far they're going to go. But big win against a very good Clemson team who just extended Brad Barnell earlier on this week. And I thought that was going to have them locked in. I was wrong. Yeah, otherwise, though, it really wasn't that wild of a day one. I also am waiting to see who is like the who's our storybook player. Like who's the guy that just is going to capture our DJ Burns? Yeah, captured our attention last year. Who's the future insurance salesman that's going to make his name known? That's going to hit 2.5 weeks, 12 3-pointers, and just go off on some future lottery pick. Basically, we'll see. I got another half of the first round games going on today, and again going in through the first couple rounds. Women's team in action later on today in their first round as well. We'll talk with Kate Crenshaw coming up next about Gamecock baseball as they get set for a huge series on the road taking on Arkansas this weekend. That's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game.
And welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyron West along with you here on your Friday, getting you set for a busy weekend of Gamecock sports. Not starting off, women's team plays this afternoon at 4, but tonight you got baseball in action taking on Arkansas for a 3-game set out there on the road in Fayetteville. Joining us on Love Chevrolet phone lines once again, talk Gamecock baseball is our guy, Cade Crenshaw. Cade, first of all, appreciate your time as always. I don't want to be prisoner of the moment and say this is the biggest series of the entire season, but it feels pretty darn important, especially after dropping 2 games against Oklahoma last weekend.
Yeah, well, if you don't want to start out 1-2 in league play, but you certainly don't want to start out with a losing record after 2 SEC series, because how tough this league is, that's almost a difficult hole to bring yourself back out of, to possibly make a push for the postseason. So every game you play in this league is tough. We know that. I mean, there's not a single SEC weekend the rest of the year for South Carolina that is not against a ranked opponent. And that's life in the SEC, but certainly a big weekend, and you've got a tough test against the number 3 team in the country.
Okay, appreciate you doing this as always, man. This is Wes. Hey, I'm used to Arkansas just having dudes when it comes to their pitching staff. I'm sure all these guys are super talented once again. The numbers so far, if I just glance at what USC sent out in terms of Arkansas starters, maybe not quite as dominant as I'm always used to seeing. Again, I'm sure they are super talented, but what can you tell us just about this Arkansas pitching staff this season?
Yeah, not as dominant as what we've become accustomed to, Wes. Even last year, you look at, Hagen Smith, who was their Friday guy last year, the lefty that threw 100 and was, I believe, the 8th overall pick, definitely top 10 in this past summer's draft. They don't have that guy on the weekends. And don't get me wrong, those guys are rare in the country to have a dude that's throwing 100 from the left side, but, they don't have that frontline starter that may jump out to you. As a staff, very similar to South Carolina this year. ERA-wise, South Carolina at 345, Arkansas at 346. I mean, it's been that similar to one another. Walks, South Carolina has a good number more walks than Arkansas pitchers do, so that's something to keep a little bit of eye on. But you also have more strikeouts, so there's a give and take there. But both teams to this point have played 22 ball games, so the numbers kind of speak for themselves, and it's good enough now. We're at that point in the year where we don't really tend to look at last year's numbers as much because you have enough sample size to take in. But for Arkansas tonight, they're still throwing a lefty on Fridays, but it's certainly not Hagen Smith. It's a guy named Zach Root. He came over. He's a transfer from ECU. He was a pretty consistent starter for them. Had an up and down year last year with the Pirates up in Greenville. And last weekend they had high expectations for this kid taking on Ole Miss on the road, and the Rebels just absolutely took it to Root. I mean, he lasted 3 innings last Friday night. Gave up 10 hits, 7 earned. And that was the only game that Ole Miss won of that series. So certainly a big opportunity for South Carolina to try to step in tonight, and you're hoping to build off some of the offensive momentum that you built this past weekend against Oklahoma. Obviously, the series didn't go your way, but you were in it every single day, and as a squad, you hit 336 this past weekend. That's not easy on any given day. It's not easy in the SEC.
Talking Gamecock baseball with our guy Cade Crenshaw here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Arkansas is a team that can hit the ball really well, tied for 3rd overall in the SEC when it comes to home runs, 4th overall in average. And it seems to be a common trend that Carolina runs into a pair of brothers on the opposing team that are very dangerous. Last week, there was the Witherspoon twins on the mound for Oklahoma. This week, it's the Alloy brothers that can mash the ball at the plate for Arkansas.
No kidding, right? I mean, we got to find a set of brothers that can step in and do what these squads are doing. You mentioned the Witherspoon twins last week for Oklahoma. They're Friday and Saturday pitching starters. Those were elite dudes, especially on Friday. The Friday twin is going to be a first-round pick. And this weekend, it's really no different. You've got 2 big-time bats and the Alloy twins. I mean, you got Wahima, who we knew. Wahima was a guy that's been in Arkansas for the last couple of years, and he's a big-time bat for them. He's going to be a top 5 rounder this upcoming summer. So Wahima Alloy's a big-time player for them, middle infielder. But then you look at his younger brother, Cahillo, who transferred in from BYU. He was an all Big 12 guy at BYU. So an easy pickup for Coach Van Horn there. But yeah, that's family connections. We got to figure out a way to get away from brothers that have been so dominant.
Cade, I thought once Brandon Stone settled in, he pitched pretty well last week. You were obviously already in a hole, and just some things just sort of went against him in that first inning. I'm curious, did we get an actual – I've seen it talked about, but is there an actual explanation about what happened with him not getting his full range of warm-up pitches? And then also, what do you think about the decision to stick with this same starting rotation going into this week and just sort of I think maybe it sounds like Mainieri actually liked what Stone was able to give them, even with that first inning notwithstanding.
Yeah, Wes, I'm not sure on the explanation there. I know Coach Mainieri had mentioned that a little bit to the media. I haven't received kind of any further information on that, and really that hasn't been discussed much anymore past that Friday. That was something that Coach Mainieri brought up that night, but really didn't mention anything further than that. So, not necessarily any media members took it anywhere. So we don't have any further explanation there. Certainly, I'm sure if that was a big deal, Coach Mainieri is going to be counting the warm-up pitches tonight in Fayetteville in the bottom of the first. But no, I like sticking with Stone here. I mean, this is a guy that I believe in. He's a dude that, I told you guys last week, just pitches with a calmness about him. And I mean, a lot of people are nervous in big spots, and it just feels like Brandon Stone's the type of guy that looks over at you next on the roller coaster and says, hey, man, we're going to be good. The ride before us came right back in here safely, so there's no need to worry. So a guy that gives you a little bit of comfort. And, yeah, last Friday it didn't start out the way you want. In fact, it started out about as worse as it possibly could, right? You get into a 4-run hole in the first inning, but you leave Stone in, you let him work through that, and he just settled back into that calm, comfortable guy that we've seen from him. Holds him to 1 run over the next 4 innings of work, gives you 5 innings overall. So I like what Stone brings to the table. He's a confident guy. He pitches with confidence, and he's going to need that on the road because Fayetteville, Arkansas, they love their chicken nuggets, they love their Walmart, and they love the Razorbacks. So it's going to be a tough environment there tonight. It's probably going to be a sellout crowd. They've got a great, great fan support out there. So tough environment for Stone, but you're hoping that calmness can kind of help him check out of the moment.
Again, talking to our guy Cade Crenshaw about Gamecock baseball. A couple more minutes to go here. Went back and looked, and this is just in the regular season, but obviously Dave Van Horn and Paul Mainieri have squared off many times. Mainieri has the advantage 28-16 in the regular season. Anything you can glean from the significance of the fact that he's had success against this coach many times in the past?
It's going to be a battle of two minds that have seen a lot of baseball. There's no doubt. I mean, I saw the number earlier this week between Coach Van Horn, who's been in Arkansas now for, over 20 years, and then Coach Mainieri, who's been coaching his whole career for almost now in his 40th season. These two have combined to win almost 2,500 games. Not just coach, but win 2,500 games. So you're going to see no checkers are going to be played tonight. It's all going to be chess. It's very strategic moves here and there. So I think heading into the weekend, that's honestly probably one of the things I'm most looking forward to is seeing how two just really, really strong baseball minds clash. But certainly glad of the guy we have in our dugout and Coach Mainieri. He's seen it all. He knows it all, and it's been fun throughout this year spending time with him, both pregame and postgame and during practice and things like that, and just seeing how he sees the game. And early on in the year, I forget who the opponent was, but he pulled a pitcher in the middle of a count. When the pitcher wasn't necessarily struggling, it was a 1-1 count. I think the opponent had a runner in scoring position, and he makes a pitching change there. Obviously, maybe the unconventional baseball mind would say, maybe just let him finish the at-bat here. And he told me afterwards, look, in that moment, they brought in Tyler Pitzer and said, I just wanted Pitzer's breaking ball there. I felt like that was the pitch that we needed to win the game. The 1-1 pitch was the highest leverage moment of the game to that point. So full trust in him. He knows what he's doing. He's when he got hired, I made the joke to him, he's got more championship trophies than I probably do dress shirts. So got a lot of confidence in him, so it'll be fun to watch those two square off tonight.
Cade, we got about 1 minute to a hard break, but give us a quick key to victory for the Gamecocks this weekend.
Key victory is calming down this Arkansas offense. They hit 322 as a ball club, so you're going to need strong pitching outings, not just from your starters, but you're going to need strong relief appearances, from guys like I mentioned, Tyler Pitzer. And then offensively, just keep up what you were doing. You hit 336 last weekend. 7 different guys had multi-hit games over the weekend. So offensively, they had it going against Oklahoma. Keep it rolling against Arkansas.
He is Cade Crenshaw. Always enjoy talking baseball with you. We'll have you on here in the next week or so as well.
All right, sounds good, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, that gets rolling tonight. Arkansas and South Carolina, 7:15 pregame for a 7:30 first pitch, which you can listen to right here on the game tomorrow. 2:45 pregame, 3 o'clock first pitch, same deal on Sunday to wrap up the series as well. We'll continue on. Get Chris Clark's insight on the latest commitment for the 2026 class for South Carolina coming up next. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
Hey, whether it's the big tournament going on or whether it's upcoming football next season, MLB season, whatever your excuse is, great time to go ahead and upgrade the man cave. And to do that, just hit up our friends at Integrated Media right here in the Midlands. Just give them a call. That phone number, 803-948-8327, or head on over to integratedmediainc.com where you can get an idea of some of the other services and things they've done at homes around the Midlands, including my house, including Chris's house. That could include, as I said, upgrading the man cave, new TV, new projector, surround sound. Maybe you want to go all in on a home theater system, or maybe it's just as simple as going in the living room, hanging that TV, hiding the wires, and making it look a little bit more professional when you have friends over. Whether you want to go all out or just some simple upgrades, Integrated Media can do it for you and make it look great. Again, integratedmediainc.com.
And welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes here in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. Chris Clark out on the road today for a very good reason, covering the now commitment of 2026 offensive lineman Zion Giles for the 2026 class for South Carolina. Chris was watching the live stream a little bit earlier on with you out there. A lot of people got up and spoke. A lot of people said good things about the kid, and he eventually committed to South Carolina. This one seemed to be one that y'all were pretty confident on before it happened earlier on this morning.
Well, I appreciate you watching the live stream, Tyler, and also not complaining about it. I'm sure the cameraman, which was me, probably didn't do the best job.
Well, so my thing was,
complained about waiting.
My thing was
too long.
Chris, my thing was, how long was it going to be till actually commits? Because I heard, I guess the principal, I think his sister talked, okay, how many speakers before we actually get the actual commitment?
That was a shorter one, relatively. You know, some of them go up there. I mean, Lenore Sellers walked to the table and was like, "I'm going to South Carolina." But this one, but look, this is a great kid. All seriousness, and you can just tell, how he's loved by people at his school, his teammates, students, fellow students. A coach came back who literally doesn't coach at the school anymore, who just grew up coaching Zion, to say some words about him. He's just a great kid, and that's number one. But then you look at this guy as a football player, and, I mean, he's got great size. He's got a great frame. You look at him, he's just physically very impressive. But, Wes, we saw this guy at South Carolina's camp last year, and his coach there at Carver's Bay, Matthew Richard, continually referenced that this is not a guy that's been a huge college prospect for, 2 or 3 years. Really, it started about a year ago where people were telling him, hey, you got potential, you got to get bigger, you got to get stronger. And, Wes, I remember seeing this guy last summer and going, all right, this guy looks like maybe the best prospect in the state, if not, top 2 or 3 easy. And he just blew up from there. I mean, just a great combination of, size and then the athleticism, too, where you feel like he could be a true tackle in the SEC.
Yeah, I was about to go that direction, man. On 3 lists him as an interior guy, number 40 overall prospect in the country. I mean, I'm not so sure he can't play tackle as well at the next level. He plays right tackle there at Carver's Bay. And, I think is one of these kids who probably, and South Carolina likes to have that position versatility, who, I mean, you just get him in your program and let's see what it looks like. Let's see how he develops physically. Does that look like, hey, he's just a more athletic guy, or does developing physically mean he's just a bigger, more kind of physically dominant guy? I personally think it could go either way. The thing that impressed me, man, just watching it, and I know it's a highlight tape. You're not going to have your lowlights on there, but watching the highlights, I mean, he dominates at that level the way a guy is supposed to. So many of your high school offensive linemen that are being projected to the next level, you're talking about a projection. It's, oh, man, look at this guy with this frame. Look at his athleticism. Look at his feet. He can move, but we've got to do X, Y, Z to get him ready. By no means am I saying he's a complete product in terms of what he's going to be in college, but, I mean, I just look at him driving guys 5-10 yards down the field. I look at him making quick work of his initial assignment and then saying, let me get to the next level and find some work. I just think it's very impressive film, man, on top of the physical gifts that are present here.
No, it's a great point, and that's just something else that was just referenced today. And when you hear some of the people that have helped him develop as a player and as a person talk about it, you can kind of see why he plays that way. I mean, Wes, you and I have been covering recruiting for a while now. We have seen guys that look great off the bus at the high school level. They play in high school, and you're like, okay, yeah, he's bigger than everybody. He should be beating everybody. That's great. How does it project? Does it project? And for some guys, it doesn't, because their redeeming trait in high school is they're big. They're bigger than everybody. Maybe they're more athletic naturally than everybody. But to really project it, does he have everything else in the toolbox? And I really think so. I mean, when you see his dad, who's also a football coach, talk about how hard he's pushed Zion, when you hear about the sacrifices that he made to give up playing basketball and to give up playing baseball so that he could fully focus on, okay, I got to get in the weight room and get bigger so I can be an SEC or, whatever, power 4 offensive lineman. That's what he did. And so that he just really values hard work. That shows up on the film. That's what you love to see out of an offensive lineman. So when you put together the size and athleticism, the hard work, the work ethic, and then the football IQ was something that his head coach, Richard, referenced too. He plays with a nasty streak. Like, he really has all the things to where you feel like, okay, it's going to be a surprise if this guy doesn't develop into a really, really good football player. And I think just to touch on the question again of position, I asked Zion after he committed, hey, tackle, right? Like, is that where South Carolina's thinking about? And he said they discussed that. But I really think he's a guy that could, if he told me, hey, he's going to play center in college, he's going to play left guard, I would believe all that, because I just, again, think he has all of that in his toolbox.
And, of course, it's still early on in the process for the 26th class, but he makes the 6th overall commitment, 5 of those being 4 stars, 3 of them from the state of South Carolina alone. And I know star ratings don't mean everything, but that's what people quickly draw themselves to. And, again, another one of these state's best prospects coming to South Carolina as of right now.
Yeah, I mean, Jazavian Currents, highly ranked guy. Anthony Baxter, also from the state, of course. And Gamecocks have done well under Shane Beamer with in-state talent. And, I think it's almost been understated how big of a pickup this is. I think he is rated in the top, I think, 150 nationally when you look at the On3 industry ranking, which is the weighted average of all 4 major recruiting services. But On3 is extremely high on him, number 40 in the country overall, regardless of position in the 26th class. The number 1 prospect in the state of South Carolina, and very high, as Wes said, on their interior offensive line rankings. Could very easily end up being ranked nationally as a tackle, too. So, and you look at who South Carolina beat. You beat Clemson, who also wanted Zion Giles, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Auburn. I mean, a who's who around the Southeast and beyond really wanted this kid. Sent head coaches down to Carver's Bay from other SEC schools to try to recruit him. So, a massive pickup. And, again, can't understate, I don't think, how big of a pickup it is for the Gamecocks.
Chris, before we let you go, let's take the folks behind the scenes a little bit. So I had to help you get the camera turned around on the StreamYard. We use StreamYard, which is a program. It's kind of like Zoom, but it's more designed for streaming things. Yes. And So I'm going to pick on Chris for a moment, but then I'm going to pick on myself. I had to help Chris get the camera turned around because it's very different. Like, if you just pull up your phone, everybody knows how to do the selfie versus the just regular picture thing.
Right.
On StreamYard, it is hidden. So luckily, Chris hit me up about this issue well before the thing started. Now, Chris, you mentioned Lenoris Sellers' announcement. I want for you to consider how you felt when you couldn't get that thing turned around, and then put yourself being me with Lenoris Sellers' announcement about to start, and it was the fastest announcement in the history of football, and I'm going live, and people are just seeing my mug instead of him.
You could turn the whole laptop around.
Well, it was on my phone.
Oh, okay.
But that's what I did. I literally turned my phone around and held up selfie mode just because I was like, I'm running out of time here.
Wow.
I was expecting, maybe we got some people talking.
Sure, no.
I've got time to figure this out.
He's
Lenoris,
right to
straight down to business. So, Chris, if you were at all nervous about not being able to get that figured out, I want you to put yourself in my shoes.
I know. I mean, I was there, and guys, to top it off, at about 10:28, my computer froze. So had to do a restart, but it's good. We got it done, and we're all good. Now the Gamecocks have a really, really good offensive lineman, and we were able to, document it pretty well, I would say. So
executed under pressure. You executed under pressure.
There's a trend of technical difficulties in getting good commits, so hopefully that's a good omen.
That's the thing.
Exactly right.
If you're going to live stream an announcement, something is going to pop up. You have to deal with. It is just a fact. So, good job, Chris. Be safe getting back, man. And I'll see you on GC Live later on today.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, myself and Wes, here on your Friday on the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes along with you for a few more minutes. Reminder, you can go hang out with Terry at Twin Peaks from 12 until 3. Then Elijah holding things down for the Schroeder's Towing Roadshow out there as they take in day 2 of round number 1 of the NCAA men's tournament, as well as the start of the women's tournament. That is just getting rolling right now with Michigan and Iowa State tipping off out there in South Bend as part of the Birmingham Regional, which is what South Carolina is a part of. And again, Carolina taking on Tennessee Tech coming up today at 4 o'clock over at Colonial Life Arena, where, again, you can go coach speak if you want. This is a game that South Carolina should win pretty handily. You focus ahead to Indiana and Utah, 2 teams that shouldn't pose too much of a threat to Carolina. And again, Don said talked about it yesterday, the opportunity for this senior class of Sanaya Fagan, Bree Hall, and Raven Johnson to go down as the most successful and most historic in program history if they can make it all the way and win a title here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, what do you think today is about, man? To me, all right, you just don't want to be the thing about the women's game is there's that big break.
Yep.
Is there a little rust? You know, maybe there is. If there is, you want to just knock it off today, right? Like,
sure.
You want, I mean, you're going to win this game. But there are different ways to win the game. You know, you can win going away, or you can win where you can probably win going away and still be sloppy. But I think the way they were playing down the stretch, certainly the way they played for most of that SEC tournament, is what you really just hope to see today. Like you're going to have the advantage at every position, and you're going to have more size than them down low. You know, I think today is just more about getting back to what you were doing right at the end of the regular season and SEC tournament play.
Yeah, of course, Don famously gave them 4 days off for spring break last week after winning the SEC SEC tournament championship. So again, maybe knocking off a little bit of rust. And look, we saw this team at the beginning of the season struggle to get off the bus a little bit. You know, they'd have the first quarter or second quarter where they're just not quite in gear. Typically turn on third quarter and win going away, as you mentioned. And could that happen today? Absolutely. You're going to knock the rust off and get yourself back in gear. But like you said, they were playing their best basketball the last time we saw them beating Texas pretty handily up there in Greenville. And we certainly hope to see that not only today, but through the next 6 games en route to what's hopefully another national championship and maybe avenging a couple more of those losses like you had against Texas.
Have you seen the odds on this thing?
Not the latest ones.
Carolina by 42.5.
Yeah, okay. It sounds about right. Their average victory in the first round under Don Staley is 32 points. So right around what you'd expect. And look, this is a Tennessee Tech team that hasn't exactly played a lot of Power 4 opponents. They lost to Colorado in the regular season by 12 points. That's a mid-tier Big 12 team in Colorado. So I think Carolina should be fine today.
Yeah, you would have to bet $50,000 money line to win $100 on South Carolina.
Probably not going to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a Tennessee Tech team that I think can shoot the basketball a little bit from outside. From what I've read, that's what they do. You know, they maybe can get hot and go in a couple of spurts here or there, but this should be a dominant win for South Carolina. And, you know, you just want to stay healthy. You just want to stay in a groove and then start getting ready for Sunday, which the Sunday game is, again, a game Carolina will be heavily favored, just not quite to the extent of today. And, you know, here's the thing. This is what this program does, though. Like, this is just what they do. This is business. I feel like it's business as usual your first 2 games for Carolina.
Yeah.
It's a business, not a business trip because they're home, but it's a business weekend for the Gamecocks. We'll put it like that.
Absolutely. That tips off at 4 o'clock. Go hang out with Terry and Elijah over at Twin Peaks all afternoon long as you can take in all the great basketball action with them out there. And that's coming up next with the halftime show right here in the game.
All right, guys, before I get out of here, let me tell you about our friends at Firehouse Subs. Shout out, as always, to our guy, Larry Chandler of Firehouse Subs. We were out there yesterday, Main Street, USC location.